Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to HMP. The March of Time Travel rolls on this week as we cover Primer from 2004. I'm your host, Adam Porchers, and joining me today, he's primed mostly off of caffeine and nicotine. Please welcome the Hartford Hellions, Sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet.
You know, when they see me lounging around in a mini storage, they don't think I'm time traveling. They think I live there.
And he's hot off his suspension as the spokesperson for Prime Energy Drinks, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and just like a weeble, I might wobble, but I don't fall down.
No, sir. And I got to be honest with you. If you got suspended for Prime Energy, if you Logan Paul'd or KSI'd, then I don't know what you're doing over there, but you need to be stopped. That much I know. Please stop him, everybody.
I drank so much Prime Energy, I went back in time.
He went back in time as we did this week, everybody. Going back to 2004, talking about Primer, or Primer as Bruce calls it. Take a drink every time he mispronounces that one.
Only Bruce calls it that. That's not actually the name of the movie.
Fairly certain that is true. He is the only one that does it. So, Bruce, what brought this one about?
I bet somebody somewhere else says Primer. Like, come on. If you're a Primerite out there, write us a letter. Like, don't email us. Don't social media, write a letter. What's the post office box?
Dave Chen is on the phone right now, typing on a typewriter, typing up how you are correct and everyone else is the ones who are wrong.
Man, he had another one this week that made me go, man, that's right up there with No Country for Old Men.
Well, the reason I kind of wanted to bring this to it, I didn't realize it was 20 years old. This is its like 20th anniversary year, so it's kind of good timing there. And in my mind, I mean, this is a small movie, but in my mind, because I hadn't seen it in a while, I remembered it as being even smaller than it is. So, famously made for $7,000. In my mind, I felt like it took the old adage of, if you want to make a movie and it's your first movie, 2 actors, 1 location, 5 crew. Well, he did have 5 crew, and I feel like they started with 2 actors and 1 location, and it grew out of that. But I could see how this was originally maybe a 20-minute short, all inside of a storage unit. You know what I mean? You could see how that's where this script might start and then grow. Yeah,
absolutely. It's not though. It's not. But I see where you're coming from with that.
You could see this being like the Lights Out, for example.
Well, this is what I'm saying. Like, that's why I'm bringing it forward. These are the kind of things I want to talk about. Things I've never really talked to anybody about this movie before, other than saying, yeah, I've watched it. It's pretty cool. So this will give us a chance to talk about all that. And, even though I know this didn't start as like a short and then it grew from that, that doesn't mean like the nugget of the idea. Like, as far as I understand, this is Shane Carruth's first dabbling in film at all.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So in your idea, I'm sure that he, being an educated person, a person with a scientific and engineering background, he probably did the same kind of things that I do when I first started to write. And it's like, look for practical advice on how to do it and how to not get in over your head. And practical advice is 2 actors, 1 location, 5 crew. So he thinks like, what kind of story can I come up with this? And then he really likes a story, so he grows it out before he films it. But I could still see the genesis of like, okay, let's go to the drawing board. What can I do with this? And then it grows from there.
Yeah. But before we get to Primer and everything, we got to say a big thank you to the people that support us over at patreon.com/HMP. Those awesome people get pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone, and of course they get to vote on movies that we watch every single month. And right now we're staying in that time travel bend here and everything. And here are the movies that we have up for vote. We got Time Crimes, Peggy Sue Got Married, Happy Death Day, Tenet, and Time After Time. We're going to keep the voting open till probably Wednesday night-ish. So if you'd like to help sway that vote, or if you haven't voted yet and you're a member over at patreon.com/HMP, go ahead and run over there, vote on that. Tell us in the comments what you think is why you vote in the way that you vote. We'd like to know. So check out that kind of stuff. Support us over at patreon.com/HMP. And if you can't do that, for heaven's sake, at least go down to the iTunes there, give us a 5-star review, aka Humdinger.
Humdinger.
Or you can while you're out there in the iTunes land there, or wherever you find finer podcasts, check out our buddies Justin and Ryan over at the Main Attraction podcast. Their last episode, they talked a bit about the second half of Invincible Season 2. I have not listened yet, as I haven't started that second half yet, but when I do watch that second half for the podcast that we'll eventually cover, I will listen to the Main Attraction podcast and steal all of their good ideas, theories, and anecdotes and make them my own. So check out the Main Attraction podcast so you can see what I stole from them. So check those guys out. They help this show, and we'd like to help those guys out as well. So check out the Main Attraction podcast, wherever you find finer podcasts. And if you like, send us an email, man. We hadn't heard from people in a while. HeroMoviePodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, man. Let's get into it, boys. Here's the IMDb plot line for Primer. I'm sorry. As we all know, IMDb 100% correct in everything they say and or do. For friends / fledgling entrepreneurs, knowing that there's something bigger and more innovative than the different error-checking devices they've built, wrestle over their new invention. It's okay. This is written, produced, directed, acted, edited, production designed, casted, and music by Shane Carruth, who would later to go on to make Upstream Color, and contrary to popular belief, not Ray Carruth's brother. A lot of that going around the internet. People are saying it.
Popular belief at all.
They're saying it. They're saying it. The word's out there, and I'm here to quash it right here, right now. You're welcome.
It's good.
But let's because Bruce has got some good notes for this. He tells us, he says awesome notes. He says awesome.
Excellent notes.
Excellent. You're going down to excellent, from awesome to excellent. Okay, fair enough. If that wasn't enough, if that excellent idea wasn't enough, let me tell everybody on our third time travel movie of March, because this sucker's got everything. What's that? You've never heard of this movie before? Well, no, let me tell you. Primer's a lot like a Robert Altman movie, if Altman put down the weed and picked up an engineering book. The year is 2004, and this may be one of the last little indie films that actually gets up to this level of notoriety while simultaneously being shot on film. That doesn't really jump out as somebody else that's really done that, I don't think. And as such, this film is grainy and the sound is nearly all recorded. We got overlapping dialogue, zero effect shots, fun with PVC, fun with day trading, meeting by the fountain, intrigue, earbuds, dishwashing, garlic hanging, schematics. Oh yeah, and time travel. You got massive amounts of setups, tons of locations, a story that's confusing yet keeps you intrigued, and it doesn't make you sit around pontificating all about nothing. It just goes, credits. This movie's got everything. Bruce, let's get into it.
There is one special effect shot.
Oh, is there?
It's when he takes the paper punch outs.
Yeah.
And he puts it over. That's the only one.
It's a nice cheapy one too, and because they see it frame within frame and everything, it can look like junk. So smart thinking on Mr. Carruth's part.
That. Smart guy.
So the thing that I love about this movie that I'll always keep coming back to when we're talking about it is that it was made for $7,000. Of course, we can put some perspective on that, but still made for $7,000. I feel like everybody, not everybody, but a lot of us feel like, I could come up with $7,000, but you totally forget that it wasn't the $7,000 alone that made this movie look as good as it did and as successful as it is, because I think it's tough to do this with $7,000.
Well, especially the way they shot it.
He also asked for a lot for free. There's so many asks on this.
And the part you don't hear about either is that he spent 2 years in post because he, couldn't hire anybody. So, you got to think he came up with $7,000, but 2 years of your life is more than $7,000 for most folks.
Yeah. He also quit. He also quit working on it a couple of times because he thought that he couldn't get past a certain thing, which I find amazing. But dude, you already did the hard part. What are you doing?
I know, and I have no idea about Shane Carruth. Just to me, just kind of comes out of nowhere, and he sort of goes back to nowhere.
No, man, no. He is in it now. He's been in it forever since this movie.
Well, I'm just going to give you my perspective. Once again, that's why we're talking about it, so you guys can help me see the difference in it. But I feel like he came out of nowhere. This is his first film, $7,000. And it's awesome for $7,000, but still the box office is like 600-700K. So it's not like F you, my life has changed money, even though it's nice. You know what I mean? It's not. Mm-hmm. And then crickets for 9 years, and then Upstream Color comes out, which I think I have not seen it, but I think I've heard more than one person say, well, I know you probably had high hopes for Shane Carruth, but you can give up on those now.
I'd heard a lot of the same. That's one of those ones that I never saw Upstream Color, mostly because I heard it was kind of very visual and stuff, and you want to see that in a theater if you can. And I missed that, and I just never really got around to it because I was like, maybe one day I'll see it, but nothing yet. So this is the only one that I know from him.
It's the I actually saw Upstream Color before I saw Primer. It's how I know about Primer was because of Upstream Color.
Mm-hmm.
and it's the exact opposite of Primer. So that the visuals are what's amazing about the movie, not the script. The script is kind of bad actually, and so it's a thing where he's like, it's almost like he's saying like, I can do this other thing. See, it's kind of what he's doing there.
Mm-hmm.
And the visuals are great, they really are, but they're not. It's not really a movie.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
If you got 13 years to work on something, you shouldn't have to pick visuals over story. Like, you have enough time to really work on both of those, if you ask me.
Now, in a strange way, let me ask you this, because just, again, not having seen it and then just recently just seeing this again today, this feels in a lot of ways like a tone poem. I know it's a lot of people don't speak about things like that anymore, but like, if you had no dialogue in this, you could still kind of more or less get what's kind of going on within this. And that's like, it feels like, and again, with the kind of overlapping Altman-esque dialogue and everything, it doesn't need you to specifically hone in on the specifics of the story, because frankly, those don't matter.
It feels like a pretty solid hard sci-fi to me, but I'm no genre expert.
I mean, that's what it's certainly attempting to be. Yeah.
I think you're wrong on that, Adam. I think that you need the dialogue in this movie, only because that's where the big reveals come from, is from dialogue. You're not seeing those. You would understand certain things, like, oh, there he is coming out of the mini storage, like you would get stuff like that, but you're not going to get why there's two of him.
You're right.
I actually pay attention to the science talk, and I think it helps. I think it's good enough. It's like at least good enough to fool me.
Now, I will agree. Well, I'll agree with that, because the first time that I saw this back in 2004 and everything, I do remember kind of like having that head scratching thing, and like, and again, the science talk can become a little white noisy. And this time I did have a like, oh, okay, now I am kind of following a lot more of what's kind of going on. And while it's scientific-ish, it never made me feel like, oh,
it feels scientific. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So I'm going to go ahead and say what I think is the central premise that makes this different from time travel movies that came before it.
Okay.
And it's part of what makes me like this, is it is something totally new and a new interpretation of the physics, and one that really works well for me to explain a practical logic problem. And the logic problem is that if time travel ever exists, then it has always existed, right? Because once you have time travel, then you go back to the beginning of time and you're checking stuff out. Like if time travel ever comes to exist, it will have always existed. Do you follow me?
Yeah. Or I always kind of also thought like you technically couldn't go back before the time travel was invented. Exactly.
That's what this movie is doing. This movie says you have to have an anchor point, and it's not even the machine made. The machine has to be turned on and running. Mm-hmm. So I love that. So there's no time travel before this anchor point, first machine, Manhattan Project of its time, was put together. And that way, all the time travel shenanigans that happen will happen from 2004 onward, because there was no machine running, in 1865 or what have you.
I like the idea that we have a
great solution.
We have to preheat our time machine. Hey, listen, I'm going to go time traveling. Can you preheat the time machine for a little bit? So I can go
that's the kind of frustration and annoyance and nuance that you get with science that makes it hard sometimes to make discoveries. But then once you figure out that you can do it that way, next thing you know, everybody's like, you know what, we're going to build one here just in case someday we need to come back here. It would proliferate pretty quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Adam, you know what the deal is you need one of those remote starts for it.
Oh, yeah. Dude, let me tell you something. If this is a PSA to everybody out there, right? If you're in the market and you get a new car and everything, the best thing that you will ever buy is one that you can start your car with an app and everything. And you can do it in like so many modern cars, like just, not even super expensive cars either. But it is worth its weight in gold. In winter, being able to warm up the car, and summer being able to cool it down. It is worth every penny. Just so if you have that as an option, for the love of God, tick that box. Sorry, that's my.
I also like that it's told out of order, sort of Memento style. More than one reviewer has compared the storytelling style here to Memento, and sometimes it's not always clear what order you are watching things in. So it absolutely invites multiple watches, in my opinion. And like I said, I think that the dynamic of this 2-person team feels very familiar to me. I feel like many times I've been in pursuits where it comes down to two very, very different sets of ethics that end up causing a lot of trouble. So the dynamic of that team is another reason I brought this forward. But, the biggest thing is when I'm thinking about this, rather than lump it in with time travel movies, I'm lumping it in with like the Richard Linklater, that first movie, Slackers. Like I'm linking it with Slackers and Clerks and maybe Paranormal Activity and Blair Witch. Like I'm thinking of it in terms of what they managed to do with a very limited budget. And, to my eye, and part of it might be because it's on Super 16 and their money went a little further or something. I don't know. But to my eye, I think this looks as nicer than Clerks or Slacker, which had quite a bit more money put into them.
Well, they also had 30 years of difference between those. Well, maybe not 30, but 20, 25 close-ish years between those two movies and this one. So
no, because not 25. This is 2004.
This is 2004. 90s. Clerks is 1993, I think.
Yeah, so 11 years.
So Slacker's like 91, perhaps 91-ish. So, like,
yeah.
You're looking at almost 20
I
years.
also would think that he's probably getting ends from Super 16, where you used to be able to do that. You would get the cut ends from people who were actually like buying this film, and then whatever was cut off, you could use yourself at a discounted rate. That's probably what he was doing, and he's probably doing that at the very end of the time that you could do that. Which is why he was able to do it for so cheap. Also, part of that $7,000 isn't the transfer from the Super 16 to the 35 millimeter. That does not go into the $7,000 that was spent on this movie.
True. And that's a principle that goes along with those other films that we're talking about too.
Right.
But anyhow, still, it's shot on film, a lot of natural light. I don't know that glass technology really advanced that much in 11 years, Adam. I think it's pretty fair to compare something on Super 16 in 2004 to something shot on 35 or Super 16 or 16 in 1991.
Maybe,
but you make a few allowances for aging, but as far as the lighting and everything, it's not like there's tons of digital filters at this point they're running this 16 millimeter film through, is there?
No, I just really mean from, I guess the difference is just how much they're doing and what they're kind of, I don't know. I don't know how to put it into words. I'm going to be honest with you.
Well, I can do it. I can do it because basically what they're doing in this movie is what you can't do in post, which is that if you're shooting on 16, it looks like you can't do close up with a camera on 16. You have to go from far away. So everything that they're shooting that's a close up is basically them with a lens coming into it, but the camera is as far back as they can possibly put it because that's what you have to do with 16. You can't. You're not going to be able to get those close-up shots, and you're going to have to do it. You're basically going to have to do it there on the day and not later.
And something that impressed me, the guy's background is in engineering. He was pretty meticulous. Actually used 35 millimeter cameras, set up shots, took still photographs, and storyboarded the whole thing with photographs on location.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so the report from Shane Carruth, so self-reporting, believe it or don't believe it, but he said that their take to shot ratio was 2 to 1. They averaged 2 takes for every shot. So that's pretty crazy. Like what's the word I'm looking for? Efficient, I guess there.
Well, I mean, because what I do know is that they rehearsed the hell out of this movie.
Oh, you have to get that kind of ratio. I mean, that's crazy.
And from what I'm hearing from him is basically he was the one who was making them do multiple shots because he was the one who was screwing up his lines, not anybody else. I was listening to the commentary, his commentary, because there's 2 different commentaries for this movie. There's the entire crew one, and then there's the one with just him. And I listened to the one this weekend, the one with just him. And he would clip off whenever he's like, we did that shot in 1 take. We did that shot in 1 take. This one took 2 because of me, because I forgot my lines again. This is the worst day of filming we had because I couldn't remember my lines. Like he kept doing stuff like that throughout. He was talking about that. He's talking about like he has the most boring the director's commentary track you've ever heard, because it's all about color correction and how terrible the sound was, and that's why they had to do so much VO later, is because of all of that. And
well, I imagine the VO is part of how they were able to get a 2-to-1 take ratio, because all of a sudden you don't care about the train going by and the car going by when you're doing VO. Because a lot of my takes were more for the audio than the video. You know, and I hate it when I do that, act like I know more than I do, but still, I've had more screw-ups for myself with audio than video.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it's also one thing that you can definitely say about this is that like they took the time with the audio and made it. I remember it being a lot muddier, but I think that was just kind of like the first hit of it, because a lot of the dialogue is going over each other and everything. And if you're not ready for that, you may just go like, I can't hear anything, but you can.
Would mumblecore have been influential on this at all, or is this too early?
Too early.
Okay.
Well, it's about, 05.
It's about the same time, but he wouldn't have been influenced by it.
No, I don't think
so. It came out
about
the
same
same time.
Come back. Because one thing I thought with the way that the sound worked on a lot of the business talk and stuff was it had a little bit of a mumblecore vibe, but I think it was also just keep the volume low so that they don't catch on to the babble and the techno babble.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and like especially like right at the beginning and stuff, like that's where you'll have the most kind of hits of the score and everything, where that kind of goes a little bit high. And you can tell that like I only know this because I'm musical, but not as musical as you could be, and so I'm listening to this going like, Shane Carruth knows a little bit of music, but not a lot of music, because this sounds like a score that I would kind of make, a little synthy, a little like you're just changing chords every now and then. It's not super intricate. It's just kind of, here we are. Here's the sort of thing. It fills up the background.
It's services.
Yeah,
it's services.
It sounds science fiction-y, you know.
It's Shane Carruth did the score, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So this is a guy who probably has minimal to no musical background, just trying to put something in there that's not awful. I mean, you got to do what you got to do, especially in 2004. I don't know that online royalty free and sound bank music and stuff was quite as affordable as it is now.
No, you were still like paying a couple $100 and they were coming on CDs and they all sounded like garbage.
Well, don't forget also that his brother is a musician, and so the two music drops in this movie are both songs that his brother had made.
There you go. That helps.
And for some reason too, when I watched it early on, I kind of thought about how interesting this would be if you replace Shane Carruth with Nathan Fielder.
Like he's scamming somebody on time travel.
Like it needs to be where he is trying to convince some other guy that he is really time traveling, and us as the viewer, we don't know if that other guy is in on it or not. Now that's the primer sequel I want to see.
That's a totally different movie though, Bruce, because
but I still want to see it.
Because it, you know, at the beginning of this movie, he's not the one who goes back in time first. So like it's one of those weird things where you're like where like because you never trust Nathan Fielder ever. I mean, ever. So like there's absolutely no trust involved with it, with a Nathan Fielder performance at all, where you're like, I don't trust a single thing that's coming out of this dude's mouth.
I just want you to get into this PVC tent. Go ahead.
So
no.
and I feel like this is a super tight script.
Yes.
I feel like everything is explained, some of it really subtly, some of it you may not even think that there's a question that needs an explanation, but everything is there. And I
disagree. I disagree with that statement. I totally disagree with that statement. But why do you say that?
Well, what exactly do you disagree with? That everything's explained, or that sometimes you?
I can't remember the character's name, but the guy who is giving them money for projects, it turns out that he had used a time machine, and they find him passed out. Like, where's the explanation there?
Well, the explanation there, I think, comes later when we realize what's been happening, and we realize what's been going on. And I will screw up and call Abraham Aaron and Aaron Abraham a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But Shane Carruth's character is Aaron, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think this was because that person who was giving them money is the father of Abraham's girlfriend.
Right.
And I think that was in a subtle way for part of Aaron's machinations, he was up to something with the family and loved ones of Aaron, something that we haven't even seen play to fruition yet. But as we see him come back, that makes sense.
But that's not explained in the movie at all.
Okay, now when I say everything's explained, I think I'm talking about the physics and science a little bit more. I'm sorry.
Also, basically it's explained because I had to get Shane Carruth's 2 cents on this, because the part that always bugged me about this movie is the handwriting. Like, why is the handwriting
that is
getting
explained?
Worse?
Yes. So
it's not explained in the movie.
In the beginning, they are creating an anti-gravity field.
Right.
And they each put their hands in the anti-gravity field to dump some aspirin there. So their hands get exposed to this, what turns out to be a temporal field and not a gravity field, briefly.
Right.
So what happens is the signal from their brain is going to hands that are just a few seconds in the past. So think of it as trying to talk when you're hearing your own voice on a delay in headphones. It takes a lot of work and practice to overcome that. Well, their handwriting, the signals being offset to their hands. And every time they travel through time, that percentage of gap between where their hands are and where their motor core is, that gap grows temporally. So the more they time travel, the less control they have on their handwriting. But that is all explained because their hands are exposed there. And I think that's one of those great things where you rewatch and you rewatch and you rewatch, and finally people would catch on. And that's what makes it fun to me. That's specifically, the handwriting is specifically what I had in mind when I made that statement.
Well, that's not what Shane Carruth says why their handwriting doesn't work, because I'd heard that explanation before.
Also, authorial intent has no bearing on the true meaning of a story. But what was his intent?
Yeah, what does he say?
He says that that basically they're copies of copies that we're seeing. They're trying to write it down, and you're going to have less. You're going to have degradation with each copy, so that's why the handwriting is bad.
He's just going multiplicity then. That's the
basically defense. Yes.
But the joy of the multiple universe time travel theory is that the clones are actually not imperfect, that they are perfect. So that kind of breaks down. I mean, even in his own explanation there, the sole purpose, once you climb into that box, you actually cease to exist. Kind of, your old purpose was just to climb into that box, and then the person comes out, takes over.
That also kind of gets into the transporter idea in some ways, doesn't it? Whereas you're transported from one place to the other. If all of your molecules have been reassembled, are you the same person? Is this a different person?
And something that I love here that was added that I've never seen any other time travel story do this, is it takes time. You want to go back 12 hours, you got to be in that box for 12 hours. And then that effectively makes their days 36-hour days. So their sleep cycle, instead of going, the 24-hour cycle, let's say 8 and 16, just the ideal cycle. Now, all of a sudden, they don't quite know what their sleep cycle is. There has been pretty good research in this, and this can cause a lot of the cognitive breakdown that we're seeing from some people if they have too many days where they get that 36-hour cycle when they've evolved to have a 24-hour cycle. Kind of the craziness that happens up north of the Arctic Circle and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, listen. Nobody wants to stay up for 24 hours. I need my beauty sleep, man. I gotta,
Don't get me wrong. I'm punching holes in the thing that it's a perfect script, but I love the script. I think that it's such a singular vision from one person who said to themselves, "I really like time travel movies, but I wish that they had done them correctly." And there's something really great about that.
This does feel like, and I'm not necessarily Shane Carruth fan at all, but when I first saw this, it felt like this person has a list of all the things that I always mention about time travel and why I won't even talk about it as a real scientific principle, knocks them all out like in the first 20 minutes, 30, 40 minutes of this movie. So sometimes it felt like it was written specifically to plug up the plot holes that always annoy me. So it makes the script maybe feel a little more perfect than it is, but it feels pretty darn perfect for the topic, for the subject matter. I can't think of one that does better. I'll put it that way.
I think part of the reason why that comes down is his engineering background. I don't know how many engineers you've ever met in your entire life, but they are anal people.
They kept kicking me off the trains, I'll tell you.
They go over just detail after detail. Like, you can have a problem that you have problem A and you know to solve it with B. They know they want to go through 5 other iterations of A before they know to get to B. Like, I've known some of those dudes, and they look at every single angle and will exhaust things beyond belief. And I bet you money Shane Carruth is one of those dudes that just kind of goes after a project and just says, here's what I'm going to do, and then sets his sights on it. Like you said, with him going through, and I believe that he absolutely, more or less storyboarded out this entire thing, knowing where his shots were going to be. Because again, that comes down to that crazy engineering thing where you want to, like, let's be able to check off all of these boxes and say that we did all of these things. Because that's, at least in my experience, what I found engineers to be like, at least personality-wise.
So how did you guys feel about the time they spent exploring and explaining the aspergillosis growth, the fungal growth on the Weeble?
It was curious.
I thought it was a really great way to explain to a layman like me that this Weeble had been through an ordeal. You put the clean Weeble in, and a filthy, aged, gross-looking Weeble comes out. And I was like, that is a really great way to tell me that Weeble has been through some stuff.
And I like that they didn't rush it, because, if this were a Universal monster movie from 1940 to 1965, the scientist pulls it out and says, look at this. Do you know what this is? This is aspergillosis. That can only mean one thing: time travel. They didn't do that. They really let us figure it out along with it, and use a little bit of scientific method there, and working in this pressure that one or both of them are feeling to get successful soon, because according to the lore of this movie, engineers are given the old Logan's Run treatment when they turn 40, but I don't believe that's true in real life.
It definitely is not, although that sounds like an engineering joke for engineers.
But you also got to realize too that this is 2004. We are still .com bubbling and stuff here. So like, that's where a lot of this stuff comes in, where we're talking about VC management money and stuff like that. And that's where, we were flying off the races of trying to get some VC tech money and stuff. And Silicon Valley was full of that. And that's what's so great about this movie, is then taking all of those things that we know from like actual life, from your Steve Jobs and all these other people that start their stuff in their garage, and having I love the fact that we, start with the holes of the garage and everything. Us just being able to kind of peer into there and then opening that up, closing it later, then masking up the windows and everything, which obviously is done for several reasons, story reasons, and probably another clerk's reason, where it's like, we could shoot during the day now. But there's so much of that stuff that's just laid out here so smartly that like, it is astounding that it was done for like just pennies.
and I just want to say a few more things about the aspergillosis too before we move on. Is I like it that the discovery was purely accidental, because, you take so many science classes throughout the years, if you get science degrees or applied science degrees, and you hear time and time again about like saccharin was discovered because the guy rubbed his lips without washing his hands first and realized this chemical residue tasted sweet. I mean, that's not a safe, happy kind of story, but so many things were discovered by accident in science. And I like it that the time travel was discovered by accident. I think that the aspergillosis is also just a little bit of like a science fan reference to penicillin and accidental discovery of penicillin because of fungal contamination of some cultures. So it kind of, to me, I saw shadows of the whole penicillin discovery there too.
I love the dude that we go to find out what this stuff is. This big man, who's
real engineer, by the way.
Oh, I would imagine, because he's a big giant dude. He looks the part, like, just, and not God bless him, not acting, so to speak, but it is like what you would imagine that dude would actually be like in life. So you just kind of let it go. But that dude is great. That whole scene is good. And again, that's another smart thing that this movie does, is that we start off, like you said, Bruce, we're starting off in this garage. We stay there for the most part and stuff. But where this movie makes you think it is so much bigger and grander than it actually is we got a lot of set changes. We go a lot of different places. We're everywhere from parking lots to like bridge walkways and stuff like that. The fountain. There's a lot of things going on. And while this is a mainly dialogue heavy film here and everything, we're going to keep you visually interested because we're going to different places. Your story starts here, but like the next sentence will be in this next location here and everything. Just that kind of that quick storytelling, not a montage, but montage-esque in kind of a way to where we're going through and we're taking a little chunk and then we're just, moving on this story and I always do you ever see any of those sketches where they just go, here are the moments in between all of those where it's just like, we wait, there's this giant car trip and then we start talking once we get out of the car. It feels like a lot of that going on in this movie where it's just like, okay, we won't talk about this till we get to the parking garage.
Later. Any thoughts on why they focus on making their money through the stock market and not the lottery?
Well, they mention it in the script.
They mention the lottery.
Because there's two reasons. One is that it would give them, it would focus some attention on them that they don't need. And two, you could get that amount of money if you knew how to get how to play the stock market in a day if you use your money correctly. And so their plan is to just do that over and over again. And when you see a couple of the numbers that they're writing down 3 and 4 million for some of these trades that they're doing. And so you got to think that by the second or third variation of this, they're already millionaires.
I think I have my own theory, and I think that these guys aren't being truthful with themselves and with each other, but I think it's a little bit ego driven because if you win the lottery, everybody looks at you and says, yeah, he won the lottery, you lucky asshole, something like that. But for some reason, you make it in the stock market, people think you actually knew what you were doing. They're still cheating, but it's like the ego, the arrogance to say I'm a self-made man rather than I won the lottery. I think some of that's firing into at least one of these guys.
Yeah,
that's neat.
Then you get FEC violations and stuff. There's a lot that I don't know. I think there's some.
I think it's around this time too that there was some kind of a snag in sports betting. Like the final scores were not staying the same, even though the outcomes didn't change. Because they were watching a basketball game and it's like somebody didn't cover the spread. And
I did like small little things like that. They didn't delve too much into it, but things that were slightly different.
It was just enough variability that they couldn't like go all in on one thing.
Man. No. We're all wrong here. You got it all wrong.
What? Tell me about the basketball game then.
What's happening is that Aaron is watching the game and he desperately wants the game to have a different outcome.
Gotcha. Then, I misunderstood that scene.
Yeah, because then Abe is like, no, remember? Because he's going to pass it and he's like, oh, right. And so that's what that is.
I think around here is though where my favorite line of the movie comes up, where he says, "I'm starving. I haven't eaten since later this afternoon."
Yeah, that is pretty great.
That is the line of the movie. Should have been. That's what fans of this movie should get tattooed on their shoulder blades.
Go ahead.
That is the line of the movie for sure. And I think that they do a very workmanlike job with the visuals of this movie, meaning it doesn't look like a couple of kids took a camcorder and tried to make a movie. Like this actually feels like, I wouldn't say like a real movie, but it feels like, man, these guys, they really did a great job making this feel fairly professional. But the one problem I have always had with this movie is there isn't that stunning visual thing ever in this movie. It's very competent feeling, but there's not that one moment where you're like, this is the visual you're going to take away from this. It's been my problem since whenever I saw 2013, 2014, around there. Like,
I can't argue with that.
I don't have a visual in my head of. Basically, it's like these guys rooting around in a garage, but there's no still frame moment of this.
I mean, the closest I would have to my favorite visual isn't all that great, but it's just like if you had to pick one, it's probably when they get the pills floating around the coil, that anti-gravity field. Mm-hmm. And even that's not great, but I'm just like saying, gee, if I got to pick something, I guess I'm picking that because it's got a little bit of a special effect to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's more about like just the overall kind of vibe of it and stuff like that, not necessarily any of those other things that we would normally stick a movie for.
I was impressed with Abe having the forethought to place a fail-safe box at the beginning of this whole experiment.
But you were, because that's where this and again, this is something that I didn't remember from the first viewing and stuff. It's just the kind of nobody trusting anybody with everything that's kind of going on. That I like that element.
It's like the Batman defense. I mean, if I'm going to create something that could potentially lead to the destruction of the world, I need to have a failsafe so I can go back and undo it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But he didn't count on just how devious and treacherous his mate was to beat him to the punch, which is really what kind of, I thought, gave this a nice little zing. And then we find out that, from the get-go, it's only been like alternative boy, because like real boy was up in the attic and stuff. I loved some of that stuff that didn't see coming, because I like things I don't see coming.
But Abe does it too.
It kind of reminds me of like a comic book. There's some storylines with multiple men where they lose track, like who's the clone and who's the real guy, and they play with that a little bit, even in Invincible with those clone brothers. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the other guy does it too. But I do like how all of a sudden it's the clones running the show, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of, well, we'll get to it when we start talking about the end. But
well, I was going to say, looking at the clock and so forth, we probably ought to start talking about the end a little bit.
All right. I do like the idea that the real guy, the original, the prime Aaron, convinces the clone that he needs to leave. I do love that idea. That
is kind of crazy.
Even the clone is like, you know what? You're right. I am going to leave. And he ends up going to France. Like there's something, because the clone is clearly the alpha of all of them. The clone Aaron is the alpha. Mm-hmm. And even he is like, that's even too bad for me. Like I won't stay here and pretend that your wife is my wife.
Yeah. And I do like, though, that when he's in France, he's building a time travel device the size of a warehouse, so he could take, in potential, in theory, a whole army of people back, or who knows what else he could take back.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they would have tried to like cram themselves in that first tiny little box. Just an attempt,
spoon, big spoon, little spoon,
like a little. It just, that's your montage section of it, where you just play a little Bonnie Tyler, I Need a Hero or something, and they're trying to like cram their way in there or something like that, and we're like, it's not going to work.
Like an Evil Dead effect, where the body and the legs like fold the wrong way and go into the book.
His arm is the only thing that gets transported. How am I going to go in the 3 years in the future to find my arm? I want more of that to happen in this show. Ray Carruth. That's what I was literally.
There it is.
Shane Carruth.
Sorry, I'm terrible. I think one of the big things that I liked about this, again, watching the second time here, one that I didn't really notice, and like you said, Sean, there's not a ton of things that jump out super visual as far as like a set piece or a particular moment or anything, but there are a lot of interesting camera stuff going on here.
Yes.
Like I said previously, ton of setups and stuff, which again for film, quite rare. And then two, there is a lot of really interesting camera movements and stuff that are going on within this. There are so many times where we'll just kind of dolly over to the right and everything, and most independent films would not be doing that at all. But like he's taking time out to do specific stuff.
Right? I mean, that's just another opportunity to introduce error if you're already low on film.
Yeah.
One more element that could go wrong, and you're like, well, nope, that's what we're gonna do, and like it pulls it off, but it brings a level, up a bit higher than you would normally think. And again, comparing it to, other first early films, like this stuff that, he did in Slacker, just being able to follow around and stuff like that. Independent films at the time weren't doing a whole lot of camera movements and stuff like that, and doing it as well as Linklater was doing it in Slacker. So it's just like sometimes that, necessity is the mother of invention definitely goes in there, and you want to stand out from the rest, and that's certainly a good way to do it.
You remember when we were talking about that Project Sorties?
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yes.
The whole time we were talking about that, I kind of pictured this in my head, like something with this vibe to it.
It could do that. Yeah.
Sorties feel to it.
It's shot for the exact same amount of money.
there's a couple of things about this movie that feel like a missed opportunity. But to get to the film, the camera movement, there is a 180 dolly shot in this movie where I was like, whoa, they're using the whole track there. Which I was really surprised to see in a.
They're moving around that. Was it the table portion? Because I think they're moving around the table at one point. And you're like, oh, look at that! You didn't have to do that.
When they're in the field outside of the mini storage.
Oh yeah, the U-Haul.
Yeah, and the realization comes to Aaron that Abe's been doing this. Has already been doing this, and you see that in the realization comes on his face, and the camera does a 180 with him, and it's a really great shot that I was kind of surprised to see because you don't see it. But then there's all of this missed opportunity stuff. Like he's playing with the garage door windows, and we're looking through the garage door at these guys. But what we don't see is him play with that. So like there should be a little bit of character development through the guys in the windows. Also, it would have made for a stunning visual to have all four of them looking out a different window and the camera's looking at them as they're looking out the window. They never do that. Also, the fact that the lighting is so clearly, where he's using tungsten in some, he's using natural light in other shots. And it's kind of, and I've heard him say, "Oh, we did that on purpose because we wanted it all to feel like the same, even though it's different clones doing this, or whatever you want to call it, because they're not clones, whatever you want to call it, but they're doubles. They're not like he doesn't play with that, and he totally could have, and he should have." In my opinion.
Because there's slight costume changes within a little bit, but not nearly as much as that would help maybe with some differentiation between exactly what's going on. Yeah.
Right. And I think he's saying that now. I think he's pulling a Lucas here where he's saying that this is what he envisioned all along. And it's like, no, you didn't, dude. You didn't. You just
like Tommy Wiseau, who really tried to say, joke's on you. This was always supposed to be bad.
Exactly. Where he's basically like, just praying to God that the movie cuts together, and so that's why he did it the way he did.
I mean, he's an engineer, and this was his first film. I don't think he ever went to.
I'm not discrediting that. I'm just saying that it's funny that he's saying like, "Oh no, we meant to do that all along."
Well,
okay.
Something that's impressive to me too is, from the best I can tell, he DP'd this. He didn't just direct it. Right.
He didn't. He had the guy who's the one of the four guys at the beginning of the movie.
Is the DP on it?
He was the cinematographer, and he did some camera work previously to this movie.
Okay, because it's like some of that camera movement and everything on the rails. That's just, I can't picture a neophyte being that ambitious without somebody egging him on. So that's why I was shocked when I couldn't see a DP listed.
Your boy's name is hold on, Troy Dick.
There you go.
He put the P in DP there.
He was part of the camera and electrical department on Out of Sight.
That's what it is.
Oh, yeah.
That's not too bad.
Time travel movie.
That's yeah. So and then Be Still. I don't know what that is, but Out of Sight. That's a good film. Good film.
Yeah, it's a big movie.
All right. Before we get to our final review, though, we have to ask. This ought to be a really good one. We have to ask ourselves how this time travel movie that, was shot for an entire budget that Stallone wouldn't get out of bed for a 30-second Dorito ad for relates back 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone.
Why, thank you, Adam. You are absolutely correct. I have a prepared statement. Hello again, Mr. Stallone, and hello again. This week's movie review is on 2004's Primer, a movie that if someone tells you they understand everything that happens throughout, they are lying. This week's Stallone Connection comes courtesy of Studio Canal, which when you look into this movie is listed as the production company. I don't know how that can possibly be true, since Shane Carruth put this entire project on his back and made what some people who are smarter than me call the best time travel movie of all time. But I'm not going to lie, Mr. Stallone. I'm glad Studio Canal is listed as the company because I have a Stallone connection. Because Studio Canal is also the production company behind First Blood, which is the movie of yours I've seen the most. Nope, I just lied to you. The movie of yours I've seen the most is actually Rocky 3, but I like to say it's First Blood because it's your best movie. But Rocky 3 has the best villain in any of your movies, and it's not even close. And there you have it. This week's Stallone connection is Studio Canal. I hope to hear from you soon. Your pal, the Hartford Hellion.
Good old Studio Canal.
I'm partial to Rhinestone. That's probably the Stallone movie I've seen the most. Him and Dolly Parton. They have the Drinkenstein song.
Oh, listen, it's a fine film. I don't think anyone's gonna doubt you on that one. I've
never seen it.
I think it's probably the OG Rocky. I think that may be the go-to, just because I mean it is the classic.
Great.
It's tough to beat. But I will say this: if you haven't seen the Stallone cut of Rocky 4, go ahead and do that. It's so much better. It's shorter.
I heard there's no robot in it though.
No robot in it. It's shorter. It flies on. It's just under 90 minutes. And gosh, you remember when movies used to be 90 minutes and you had a good old fashioned time and then you just left? That's what this movie's like. Speaking of which, though, this movie itself was only, an hour 17, which I remember it being fairly short. I didn't remember it being quite this short, but at the exact same time, too, I would not want this movie to go on for another 20, 30 minutes.
No, definitely not.
It would just be too much. It's exactly where it should be. You've got all the information out there. Now, granted, they probably could have stretched out and parsed it out a little and pasted a little bit, but I think you might lose the movie at that point as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here at HMP, we got our own patented Robin rating system. Bruce, where does, I almost forgot the name of the darn movie, Primer, fall on the Robin rating system for you?
Primer is enjoyable, man. I love this movie. Probably not my favorite time travel movie, but boy, it might be my favorite one to talk about. Like, when it comes to minutia and details and stuff. For me, this has got to be a Dick Grayson. I understand it's not going to be for everybody, but I also have that love of the can-do attitude. A movie that's made for an amount of money I've actually seen before is always going to get like an extra star versus something that's made for amounts of money that are just numbers in the air. So I love the ultra low budget, the can-do attitude, the story of the guy's first time out, and he has a great story to tell and kicks the butt of movies with budgets 100 times this.
What was your rating? Oh, it's
Dick Grayson.
Dick Grayson. I'm sorry. It's one of those things too that I think even if considering that budget, that's like we said, most of that was kind of film stuff and everything. Like, what if he was shooting digital? What would this have been costing at that point? I wonder. Oh my
man, you're not kidding. It'd be less than that.
It'd be.
He'd probably spend He'd probably spend $6,000 on a really good digital camera, though.
I don't know. Like 6 years later, you could have shot this on an iPhone. 100%. So
I'm thinking he's the guy though that if he's shooting this today, I think he's getting the Blackmagic Pocket 6K.
Well, again, I don't know. You can go even. I think you can do less, but I feel like Shane Carruth might be that guy. Shawnee, what do you
got? For me, it's a Tim Drake. I like this movie a lot. I think it's so clever. The writing is just so great, and he clearly had something to say, and he clearly wanted to show everybody that this is the way time travel movies are supposed to be. And it was so singular when it came out that other people who make time travel movies literally call him to ask for him to read their script. Rian Johnson has done this. He has a consultant credit on like Allegiance or something like that. I don't know the movie. But it's one of those teen movies that came out in the mid 2000s after Hunger Games, where everything Divergent
series.
Well, yeah, there's Divergent, Allegiant, and then there was one more. Only two of those movies are good.
I wouldn't know, but he's got a consultant credit on that because he knows what he's talking about when it comes to this hogwash, which I just find so great. I think that for a first-time movie maker, this is as good as it gets. Like, you're not going to find a first movie made like this because he didn't go to film school. This guy just was like, this is what I want. And so he made it, and it's awesome. So it's a Tim Drake for me.
Yeah, Tim Drake for me as well. When Bruce mentioned this and everything, and I was like, it's not available on Amazon Prime, which is funny. I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna need to rent or buy this. And I was looking, and you're like, it's a couple more bucks. I purchased it actually after watching it. Glad I did, because I want to watch it. Because I want to watch it again. I feel like this will I'll get at least another 2 or 3 out of this, because having rewatched since we'll call it 2005. Man, there's a lot of stuff that I didn't see. A lot of and again, it's one of those. I think that like the OG Mission Impossible, I can probably watch this a whole bunch of times and then one day just go, oh, that's it. I understand all of this now, and I hope that day happens for this movie where I watch a couple times and then all of a sudden it just the heavens part and all the information just spills its way into my big dumb brain. I can't wait for that day to happen. We'll see. Well, fingers crossed, everybody. That is it for this episode of HMP. We'll talk about what we're doing meanwhile, or next week, rather, in just a moment. Bruce, plug something. What do you got?
Just keep checking out my YouTube channel. I keep intending to throw up a video that I put together actually quite some time ago, and I've just kind of keep forgetting to put it up. It's some bloopers and outtakes and stuff from Werewolf Fighter that I think people have some fun watching. So just check the YouTube page from time to time. Maybe that'll pop up there.
It's so long ago that Bruce has a mohawk in this, so you might as well go and wait for that video to pop.
Wow.
It's weird, but he looks good. Pulls it off very very Bebop and Rocksteady-esque, if you will. Sean.
We've got a show called 30 Questions where we ask 30 questions of some nerdy property, whether it be your Marvel or your Star Wars. Check that out. It's on podcatchers everywhere.
Hey, if you like this show, share it with friends, man. Let other people know that this show is out here, and if they're not a pod catching person, send them over to the YouTube. Check us out over there, because we got all of our episodes are up there for listening pleasures as well.
If they're a big fan of Primer, maybe you just happened to mention that I had excellent notes, and they'll check it out.
Yeah, amazing notes. I thought it was amazing or excellent. They were excellent. I'm sorry,
excellent.
They were excellent.
I thought he said awesome.
I thought he said awesome too. I'm not gonna lie. I thought he was just like, these are some pretty awesome notes. Here's the thing: we have receipts. We can go back and listen.
I just looked at the receipts and it says I have excellent notes. Thumbs up.
I will find out tomorrow.
Fair enough with that one. As we said, patreon.com/HMP. Those awesome people get voting and everything, and we got your time crimes. Peggy Sue got married. Happy Death Day. Tenet. Time After Time. Which one of those do you want to see? Go over there to patreon.com/HMP. Join up at any level and get to be part of the fun, everybody. That'll do it. Join us next week for our Patreon selection for Sweet Sounds of Go Backs from the Internet. Bruce Leslie, I'm Meta Portress. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty.